Whoa, okay, I'm up. What? It's only 6 in the morning. Why are they needle gunning? Come on! I'm Sean here at L'Oreal Arts, and welcome to another exciting episode, where today we will be talking about the deck department, from the perspective of an engineer. Oh, needle guns. The tool of choice for deckies around the world, chosen for its effectiveness in fighting rusts and destroying eardrums. Few things in the maritime industry are louder than a needle gun, in my opinion. When you're in a room and someone decides to needle gun, oh, it's loud. While the engineers are busy slaving away in the engine room, keeping the ship running and drenched in sweat, members of the deck department, more commonly referred to as deckies, are typically found working in nice, cool breezes outside and in cool, air-conditioned bridge decks. Although, engineers get their revenge when it's 20 degrees outside. Although I have quite a lot of respect for those who can deal with the bone-chilling wind on a day like that. It's not fun. I do not like the wind, but I'll take my cozy engine room over that. Deckies are the ones who are responsible for navigating the vessel and maintaining all the exterior equipment and machinery. Well, I say that, but when something actually breaks, they just call the engineers. The deckies have the most important job on the ship because they're the ones who can stop the ship from crashing into things. I mean, usually when you hear about any kind of maritime collision, 99% of the time, it was a deckie's fault. Not that I'm, pointing any fingers or anything. The biggest danger of being in the deck department is, quite honestly, the danger of falling overboard. On a ship, you'll be working in various conditions that are quite hazardous. You'll see a lot of large waves and swells that will cause the ship to roll back and forth. It could send you off balance, and the only thing stopping you from plunging into the ocean is a 3-foot rusted out guardrail that honestly feels super sketchy when you lean on it. If you do fall, you better hope that someone saw you. Otherwise, the last thing you'll see is the ship driving away. If the water is frigid cold, your muscles will lock up and you'll drown before anyone can save you, or even realize that you fell. If you've ever heard the term lost at sea, this is what they mean. Even if you're wearing a life jacket, you most likely won't be spotted if the weather is bad. Now, the deck department is made up of 8 ranks, just like the engineering department. They also have unlicensed and licensed positions. The licensed positions are the master, more commonly known as the captain, the chief mate, the second mate, and the third mate. The unlicensed members are the bosun, the able-bodied seaman, or known as the AB, and the ordinary seaman, otherwise known as the OS. And then, of course, there's the deck cadet. Unlike the engine cadet, the deck cadet is less likely to destroy the ship and more likely to get themselves killed. Deck cadets are the entry-level position for the officers and are responsible for learning navigation, tying up the ship, and whatnot. They participate in mooring, anchoring, navigation, cargo operations, steering the ship, and maintaining the deck spaces, as well as various other duties that the chief mate assigns them. On the deck side, there's a lot more moving machinery such as cargo operations, cranes, winches, and whatnot. Even the mooring lines can kill you if you're not careful. While the engine room is full of stationary hazards likely to maim and disfigure you, the deck department is much more likely to kill you outright with all the moving machinery around. As a deckie, it's absolutely critical to be aware of what's going on around you. Cargo could fall on your head, you could be hit by a swinging crane, lines could snap and literally cut you in half. There are plenty of ways to die as a deckie, but don't be discouraged. Nearly everyone who's in the industry makes it through the entire career with little to no injuries. If you keep a good head on your shoulders and follow proper safety practices, then you have very little chance of actually being hurt. Just remember, they're hazards, not dangers. Next up is the ordinary seaman, otherwise known as the ordinary, or OS. This is the entry unlicensed position for the deck department. People in this position will see nearly all the grunt work and back-breaking labor that is assigned in the deck department. From securing cargo containers to chipping and painting, if it looks like it sucks, then the ordinary is probably doing it. The able-bodied seaman, or AB, is the next rank up from the ordinary. This is a person who has been working for at least 2 years and pretty much knows what they're doing. They're able to stand bridge watches and man the con. That's nautical speak for driving the ship for those of you who've never seen a movie before. Typically, you'll find the OS and the AB doing all the deck maintenance. The deck department has a wide variety of tools and equipment that is used for maintaining the hull of a ship. They spend a large portion of their time simply descaling and repainting surfaces so they don't rust out and put a hole in your ship. I can tell you that it's very important. I was once on a very old ship where they went into a shipyard and found out that the hull was literally 1/10 of an inch thick. I could have accidentally kicked that thing and put a hole in the ship. Like, if we were sailing and we got hit by a bad wave, we could have sunk. Chipping and painting is an extremely intensive process where you typically take an air-powered tool such as a needle gun and an electric-powered tool such as a hand sander and spend literally a month or two slowly chipping away at the paint until all you see is a nice, clean shine. In my opinion, this is literally the most boring thing in the entire industry. Since the engine department does this too, I have literally spent full 8-hour shifts sitting on a bucket and chipping and painting. 8 hours. It's like watching paint dry. Although, some people actually really enjoy it. I don't understand those people. Some people will put earphones under their earmuffs and will listen to music all day. Okay, honestly, it can actually be pretty peaceful. One thing to note, though, is to always wear gloves. The constant vibrations from the needle gun can cause an injury similar to using a jackhammer if you go too long without using gloves. Your hands will turn all white and it's just not a good time. The bosun is the one who runs the show. To say that they own the weather deck is not too far from the truth. They're the one who cracks the whip on the unlicensed members and keeps them working on the project that the chief mate wants done. A typical bosun locker, as they call it, is a big room in the ship that is usually located in the bow below the anchor windlass. These lockers are filled with lots of mooring lines and tools for splicing lines together. Splicing in the maritime industry is where you take apart one end of a rope and then basically meld it together with another part of the rope to make it as if it was just made that way into a loop. You can do this for steel cable too, or wire as it is called. One thing to note though is I actually have never done that. Another thing to mention is that the bosun lockers have enough wooden stakes and spikes that you would think that they're professional vampire hunters if you didn't know any better. However, these spikes are used to take apart knots. They're known as marlin spikes and not actually used to kill the undead. The third mate is just like the third engineer, fresh on their license and generally have no idea what they're doing. However, unlike the third engineer, they know how to tie a bunch of knots that they'll never ever need to use. You typically will find these people standing bridge watches, bored out of their mind. When mates stand bridge watches in the middle of the ocean, they're typically 4-hour rotational watches. These watches will go for 4 hours and then start up again 12 hours later. Typical watches are the 4 to 8, the 8 to 12, and then the legendary 12 to 4 watch, lovingly called the balls to 4 watch on the account of the 2 zeros looking like 2 balls. But that's only if you go by 24-hour time, typically used by the military. The balls to 4 watch is the most brutal watch there is. There honestly is nothing like walking on a ship and being told you're going to stay up when you typically sleep for the next 3 months. That can really mess you up. But these aren't as nearly as bad as the midnight to 8 night engineer watches or the 6 to 6 watches that some ferries stand. That's a 12-hour watch. For a bridge watch, the most exciting thing you'll see is maybe you'll see a seagull flying by, or maybe you'll see a dot on the horizon which turns out to be another ship. In the open ocean, there's nothing but water. Like, seriously, it's all you see. I've seen a few new mates absolutely lose it when they see another ship after a couple hours. It's literally the highlight of their day. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. I had to ask my decky friends about this one. The second mate is typically the navigator of the ship. They are the ones who will plot the course of the vessel. They are responsible for correcting charts to make sure they're up to date, as well as checking the compass for any errors. They also do what's called celestial navigation, which is looking at the stars or something. I don't know, I'm an engineer. It's like magic. The chief mate, otherwise known as the mate, is the star of the show. This person is in charge of managing the cargo of the ship. They're responsible for making sure that the ship is properly balanced and ensuring that each container is placed where they need to be. They're basically the deck equivalent of the first engineer. On most ships, the chief mate is the ship's medic. If you get injured in any way, you'll see either the chief mate or the second mate to get your injuries taken care of. I know I've been taken care of once or twice for gashing my head. I say injuries, but I mean like small injuries. If you lose a finger or your arm gets broken, there's not much they can do for it other than just keep you alive until you get to a hospital, which might be for like a couple weeks. Just like everyone else, the chief mate is a watchstander as well. Since there are only 3 different mates, each one will have to fill a watchstanding spot. The master, which is their official title, is more commonly referred to as the old man, though I'm not sure what nickname they call women. This person is solely in charge of the vessel. The ship is their complete and total responsibility. The captain is responsible for ensuring the safety of the ship and their crew, and also makes every decision that affects the ship as a whole. One thing to note though is that if you're an engineer, like me, you'll never ever be captain. You can become a chief engineer, but that's it. It's kind of a pipeline type of thing. Keep that in mind if you're thinking about joining the merchant fleet, because that can be a big deal for some people. However, this massive amount of power and responsibility comes at an extreme cost if something goes wrong. So I'm going to ask you a question. Whenever there's a major maritime incident, no matter what it is, what usually happens? If you said fire the captain, then you're right. Even if it wasn't the captain's fault, their career is almost always over because they're the sole person responsible for everything that goes on in the ship. If something goes wrong, then they're at fault by default, no matter what. Welcome to another episode of Safety Time. Today on Safety Time, we have Bob and Jessica. After a long day of maneuvering into port, they're finally ready to tie the vessel up. They just finished securing the mooring lines, but little do they know, the vessel came in too fast to dock, and now there's a lot of tension being placed on the lines. Can you see what's wrong here? As far as accidents go, this incident is fairly common in the industry. I've heard a number of stories from people I've worked with, but fortunately I've never seen it myself. The biggest thing about mooring lines, or really any line, is that when you put a synthetic rope under a lot of tension, it'll stretch out. If there's too much tension and the line snaps, the line will turn into a rubber band, but all that energy will go back and snap back, and then the rubber band will turn into a lethal projectile that you have almost no chance of surviving if you get hit directly by it. You could be getting hit with like 60 tons of force depending on what kind of line it is. And I'll let you think about what that would do to you. The biggest thing to know when you're dealing with lines is where you're standing. There are specific danger zones that you have to avoid or minimize at the very least if you can't get out of it. Standing out of these zones will ensure that you won't get hit or you get pinned or caught in a line or anything like that. In my opinion, this is one of the most dangerous hazards that deckies have to deal with. You never really know when this is going to happen unless you're paying attention. There are so many stories of people losing their limbs and being killed because of this danger. There's even a training video that new cadets and new people into the industry are required to watch before working on how dangerous these lines are. So there you have it, a full rundown on the deck department. In the next video, we'll cover the stewards department. If you liked the video, please like, comment, and/or subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell. Don't forget to join us on Discord, where you can interact with the maritime community and share feedback on the show. Can't wait to see you there. Until next time, this is Sean from L'Oreal Arts, wishing you fair winds and following seas.